Good evening, Bulls fans. I am not sure how long we were just staring at the camera before I realized we were live. I'm Matt Gritzmacher. I'm joined, as always, by John McWhinney. This is the Olympic Rundown on Blue Bowl TV. Uh, we do have that new name for
Our YouTube channel.
our YouTube channel. Somewhere, I'm hearing myself in the background, so that was a great start. Um, we now have a YouTube channel, and it's Blue Bowl TV, and it's kind of replaced. Uh, it's now an umbrella for all of our stuff. We said this last week. We said it the week before. We are still the guys from UB Bull Run, covering UB's Olympic sports, everything but football and basketball on this show. We do cover those on Bowls and Beers, another show on this channel. That's what happens. We're kind of up to the full fall sport offering now, except for rowing, which in recent years has done less and less in the fall, and I'm not sure I even know their schedule yet, but we'll get there when we get there. Last week, we started off with cross country, opened their season at Colgate last week. They were off this weekend, but we do have two more teams joining the fray, John. Men's and women's tennis this week. We'll also talk about volleyball, still looking for the first win, and women's tennis, who's on a bit of a hot streak nicely, and men's tennis, who's on an even hotter streak, even more nicely. That's what's on the docket for this week. John, start us off. Whatever you want. We'll get to tennis eventually, but if you have something else.
No, I don't really have anything else to add to your absolutely wonderful intro.
It was more wonderful when my own voice was playing in my ear from some window.
Sarcasm was implied.
Yeah. We try.
Yeah, we try. We're not professionals, and it's okay. I guess we'll start. Well, we'll do ladies first. We'll start with the women's tennis. It's a tradition on the show for those who maybe this is your first time watching. Maybe it's not. We tend to repeat ourselves a lot on the show, but it's a tradition that when a sport starts, we talk about them first on the show. We'll start with women's tennis. They compared to the men, they had a very short trip, just on the road to Cornell. Unfortunately, Cornell, in all of their wisdom, has not made any brackets available.
I'm going to interrupt you to ask a very important question.
Okay.
Is Cornell actually wise? I don't think they are.
Well, given how poorly Ivy League schools have been when we have competed against them, because
yeah, they play good tennis, but they do not have good tennis SIDs.
Nope. Because apparently we are still the Buffalo University Buffaloes. That one.
Dartmouth. That's 2 years old now, too. Like, that really persists. I hope someone at Dartmouth knows how unfortunate that was.
Yeah, that reference is almost as old as the show, our show itself. Yeah. I think we started the winter before that unfortunate incident.
Anyway,
Coach Maines' group, they stayed kind of close to home. They went to Cornell. We don't have much information beyond what UB had in their release. Cornell hasn't released any of the brackets yet, so we can't really comment much beyond what UB has put out. In the one double flight, Margarita Kotak and Tanya Stoyanovska made it to the final, which I think we had speculated a little bit before the season started on who Diana Agastieva's replacement would be in UB's top doubles pairing, and it looks like it might be Stoyanovska.
Yeah, and I think that's the right move. I think sometimes, and I think the last couple of years, Kristen Maines has, worked to find good chemistry and have strong doubles top to bottom. And I think that's a great instinct. I think this year, just put Kotak and Stoyanowska together. Uh, unless some people really surprise, Anna Savchenko surprisingly started in the A, surprising to me, I should say, started in the A flight for singles this weekend. Put Kotak and Stoyanowska. They're the best combination of experience and top of the lineup play. Let's get them together. If they can win, 75% of their double sets this year, I'd love to see that. If they've got the chemistry, let them at it. I think it's the way to go. And John, to the football games at halftime. We could.
Yeah.
I'm getting the old Dave Brand watching the Sabres game action right now. John's a Cardinals fan, so it's always tough when they're in prime time and we've got to do a show.
Yeah, this happened a few times last year. I think once or twice they were on Sunday night, but luckily I'm not in my dorm room. It's not as obvious with my head tilted up like this, sitting at the desk at my dorm, or not my dorm room, my on-campus apartment at UB.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to tennis. There was a freshman. We've talked about just how solid the women's tennis recruiting has been, and I'm absolutely going to butcher her name. I apologize for this in advance. Emil Abibula?
I would have said Emel Abibula.
Okay.
But I do not quote me on that. Let's see if they definitely don't have a media guide yet. Let's see if they've got. She's Romanian. That doesn't help me much. No, they have nothing on her. They don't have a picture. They don't have a bio.
Okay, Matt is the linguistics guy. I'm the engineer.
Yeah.
So
usually I can do okay, but if you just give me that name, I would have thought it was not from Romania. So I don't know how to pronounce it. Abibula. I don't know. She impressed me as well.
Yeah, she won the consolation bracket in her flight. Which flight that was, we don't know yet.
We don't know. We may never know, to be honest. If Cornell hasn't published the brackets yet, UB's told us everything UB's going to tell us. We don't even know who the SID in charge of tennis is, actually, as well. Because I don't think that is explicitly listed as having tennis. That is a side note for John and I. We do not need to talk about that on the show. But, yeah, she strung together a few wins to, even if it's the B consolation, she strung together a few wins to get that. I mentioned Anna Savchenko. She started in A singles. That's great. It seems like UB had a pretty solid showing in B singles where, in addition to Mercedes Lasabia Rubio making the finals there, Laura Halterbosch, experienced senior, St. Jonathan here, sophomore with a very exciting freshman year behind her, and Haley Hollins, the Niagara transfer, who we'll see what we get out of her, but certainly, depth, someone who knows the area and steps in. I'm all for having more bodies on the team, especially I like the idea of having enough bodies to have fewer people playing both singles and doubles if possible. But all three of them, in addition to Lasada Rubio, won their first match in that B flight, which I like. It feels to me, John, looking at just how many people we had in the respective flights and what Cornell had to say about it, I feel like the A singles flight was quite large. The B flight may not have been that large. Like the A flight may have been 32 people and the B flight 16.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell anything from the doubles flight other than I think it was small because we only had one doubles team of note. If we had another doubles team, there must have been no consolation bracket, which I think is actually true based on what Cornell said.
Mm-hmm.
That there wasn't a consolation bracket, but maybe there were only 8 teams there and we only entered 1, or we entered 2 and the other one lost right away. Little hard, but nice to see some new names succeed. If anyone is watching, we'd love actually, I'm going to tweet at them tomorrow and ask how to pronounce that name because we should know. And then next week we'll tell you all, which is great because then you'll know as well. Uh, they're off next weekend. Usually, men's and women's tennis alternates in the fall, which is not necessarily the coaches coordinating, but it's just nice for me. And spoiler alert, doesn't look to be the case this fall because both teams are in action 2 weeks from now. Women's tennis is hosting their annual fall UB Invitational, which would be really cool if you could go to that. John will talk about it when the time gets there. That's historically been a place for the Bulls to really pick up a bunch of momentum in the fall. I don't actually think they're going to West Virginia this year, which is a bummer because that's also a place where we've had success. But we'll see them again at the UB Invitational, which in years past has had at least 3 singles flights and 2 doubles flights, and I think last year had 4. I'm not sure. But we'll certainly see the full lineup in that. Expectation.
Do we know if that's at the Miller Tennis Center?
I feel like it's usually been held outdoors at the tennis courts right near the stadium. But it could be at Miller.
If it's at the Miller Tennis Center, that would be more beneficial for me because that's literally less than half a mile from where I live.
Nice. Save on gas money.
Unfortunately, I'll be traveling back from Texas that Friday.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Well, then you'll go on Sunday when we'll win all the championships.
Yes. So I think we can move on over to the mosey on over to the men's team, where a pair of names, which I should back myself on up, they took. I just gave myself a false start. They had, well, compared to the women, they had quite the road trip going all the way out to Napa, California, which I hear is lovely this time of year. And only 4 names made an appearance for UB, which I really don't know how much we should read into that.
I think it's just travel. Coach Nickel had a line in the UB release about thanking the people who hosted the student athletes. So I think it was just travel limitations, to be honest. If I can interrupt you, which I say that as if I haven't already interrupted you. I don't mind too much. I do not think that we should take these as the top 4 names. I just think they're 4 names who went. One of them is Ethan Nittolo, who, to whatever extent UB is going to have success this year, it's going to ride in big way on Nittolo, who's experienced compared to a lot of the team. And he went undefeated in singles over the weekend, defeating folks from Tulsa, UNLV, and Oklahoma State. We'll see what kind of... I don't think that we're going to see any doubles pairings really settle out in the fall. But he partnered up with Hao Sheng Koi. Honestly, Philippines, Bangladesh. I feel awful that I don't know that off the top of my head.
Malaysia.
Malaysia. All right. Well, you put it right in the middle of my 2 guesses, and that's what we've got. Men's tennis has always been an international team, and this year, especially so. But they partnered up for both matches. They split their doubles matches. And then the other 2 that were in action were Philippe Gerbic and Wilhelm Friedel. And let's see. Friedel was 1-1, and Gerbic was 0-3 in singles. And then those 2 paired up for doubles and were also 1-1. With wins over UNLV and a loss to San Francisco. I don't know what more there is to say there, John. I similarly hopeful that in 2 weeks when the men are at the Binghamton Invitational that everyone in the lineup gets a chance to play. And we can see a little bit more. And I think that's all they've got for the fall and then it's ITAs, and that's their whole fall is only 3 competitions. Which is a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, now that I look at it a little more closely, 3 of the 4 that traveled are newcomers, so it makes sense to me that Coach Nickel would want to get the incoming freshmen as much competition time as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Natowo, we had talked, in our previews leading up to the season that he could very well be the guy stepping in at number one singles, and uh, maybe Coach Nickel just wanted to see more of him. Who knows?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I don't think there's really much else we could say.
Yeah.
Say on men's tennis, but
Men's tennis.
that's men's tennis.
We'll see you in 2 weeks when you're at Binghamton, which I don't like Binghamton very much.
You don't like any. I mean, neither of us like anyone that's not UB.
Yeah. I know. I was just thinking that every week we do the show, I've got a different school who I'm kind of grumbling under my breath about how much I dislike them. And that's okay. I feel no remorse for that. Binghamton in particular holds an especially dark and sadistic place in my heart. Because now they're in the MAC for tennis, and that's unfortunate, and it grants them legitimacy that I don't think they deserve. Thank goodness we beat them in the championship a couple years back, or else that would have really sucked. But we'll talk about that some other day, maybe. John wants to get volleyball out of the way so that we can have fun talking about soccer. I understand that desire.
It's not like just getting volleyball out of the way. The issue with volleyball is, and we talked about this last week, is that it's very hard for you and I to, or really any UB volleyball fans, to be invested and follow the team. There's no presence, very little presence on social media.
They did tweet this week. And it wasn't just a recap tweet. It was like a congrats to somebody tweet.
Okay.
But it was one. So.
And, basically until October, they don't have a true home match. This week they're going to be at Niagara, which is the closest they'll be, the closest thing they'll have to a home match until they open up MAC play.
Yeah.
And the past few matches, outside of like live stats, or it's just been hard to follow. So I don't have a whole lot to say on the three matches. I can't really elaborate too much off of box scores. So I'll just step back and let Matt do the talking.
All right. Well, I will let you know that I felt that this weekend's they went 0-3 again this weekend, which is what they're going to do. It seems. I did think that this weekend's slate of opponents were significantly tougher than last week when they were in Pittsburgh. I thought that Georgia Southern was their hosting the tournament, was their opening match on Friday. They were perhaps the most beatable team on the slate, and they were coming in at 4-4. And then South Carolina came into the weekend undefeated. Spoiler alert, leaves the weekend undefeated. And then Wake Forest came into the weekend 1-3, but also is an ACC team, has all that. I shouldn't say all that money, but they've got money in their athletic department that we don't. Each weekend so far has had, one match that went 5 sets and 2 matches that were straight set sweeps. And I still feel like we're getting some improvement. UB did push Georgia Southern to 5 sets, and they did so after it really looked like they were in deep trouble. They dropped the first set 25-13 and the second set 25-20. They won 2 very narrow sets at 3 and 4. And then in the 5th set, they I think they were even at 11-11 before it kind of got away from them, which is certainly the closest they've been to winning, especially considering they came back. In their other 2 5-set matches, they had chances to win in the 4th set and kind of squirreled those away. Whereas in this one, they had to come all the way back. And I was glad to see their fight there. What I was particularly encouraged to see against Georgia Southern was that they managed that without Felicia Watkins having 17 or 23 kills. And of course, I'd like for her to succeed as much as possible, but through the first 2 weekends, um, she either had 22 kills in the first, or 23 kills in one match, and they were very close to winning, or she didn't have any kills and they were very far from winning. And then in another match, she had 17, they were close, or she didn't. And this was an example where 9 kills is still a good amount, but it isn't Felicia Watkins being totally unstoppable and that being the difference for UB. They hit 164 in that match, which isn't great, but it's better than they have been. And then, against South Carolina is undefeated. I'm actually surprised to see they're not ranked. But South Carolina hit over 600 in their first and third sets. I was surprised, by a number of things in that match. But what can you do in a match like that? They dropped 25-13, 25-20, 25-7, which might be the most lopsided set that we've seen from UB, certainly since I've been writing for the blog. I think even against Penn State, they got to 9 in every one of their sets. So that's a bummer. Talked about the Georgia Southern match that happened. It's I thought it was a more competitive 5-set match than their other 5-set matches from other weekends. But I was very glad to see on their one Saturday competition, the Bulls come out and really give Wake Forest a run in the first set. Wake was 1-3 coming into the weekend. We're coming into the end of the weekend having dropped to Georgia Southern in 4 sets, but did push South Carolina, who was undefeated, again, to 5 sets in their tournament opener. So when UB came out and led Wake Forest, they led Wake Forest as late as 16-12. I think they led them something like 18-17 at one point, 20-19. They led Wake Forest for a lot of that. And that first set just kind of fell away, and that was a bit of the end of it for UB. But I was really glad to see that first set. One thing that happened there is Felicia Watkins had 5 kills through... UB had a 16-12 lead. Felicia Watkins had 5 kills. Cassie Shadow had 2 kills. They seem to be rolling. From 16-12 and the ensuing 13-5 run that Wake Forest used to take the set, UB only had 2 further kills. So they only earned 5 more points, and only 2 of them were on kills. It kind of dried up for them. And I really didn't think that anyone, as much as we can glean from box scores, finished particularly strong there. I do think that Scout McLaren continues to really impress. If UB can keep getting 4 to 7 kills and 2 to 4 aces from McLaren in addition to her setting duties, that is incredible, and some real versatility in the offense. Otherwise, what can we say from the box score, as you said, John? Hopefully you can attend this Tuesday at Niagara, which would be great. Hopefully Bucknell provides some free video next weekend for their tournament where UB will face Oakland, the Detroit Oakland, and then Cornell and Bucknell. Hopefully we have a little bit more to go on this time next weekend. Maybe we won't. We'll certainly at least have Niagara, which maybe John will be in attendance for.
I should be. I mean, I work in the falls, so I guess I could just hang around, find some place to hang around, maybe grab a beer or 2, and then go to the game.
Find some place to hang around up there. I shouldn't rag too hard because I grew up in Niagara County as well, but I feel like other than Military Ave, it doesn't matter. You'll make it.
Yeah. Anywho.
Hopefully everyone stays healthy and we win a match. Let me look very quickly at how Niagara Volleyball is doing.
And how long's our streak up to with
Niagara?
Yeah, what's it?
Men's soccer is playing them this Thursday, and that will be 491 days. So I think we're at 487. But this week is big because this week has volleyball. Men's soccer should beat them, or at least not lose to them. But I think Thursday will be 491. Yeah, so Niagara is 1-10 with their only win against Cal State Fullerton, which I don't know how to gauge Cal State Fullerton's strength. But most recently they've been swept by Dartmouth, swept by Army. Beginning of this weekend, they took Hartford and Central Connecticut to 5 sets. So I don't know. I don't know how good these schools are in volleyball, but they're 1-10, so it's tough to say they're not the worst team that we've seen so far in our schedule. And a win there would be useful. And then we've just got one more weekend till MAC play. At which point, last year we were just like this in MAC play or before MAC play, and then we were able to squeak into the MAC tournament. So maybe we do it again. I don't know. Maybe we'll have a year where we have more non-freshmen than we do freshmen. That would also be swell. But who knows if that's going to come. Oh, did we not play Niagara last year? We didn't. Well, that's not encouraging. I guess I have nothing more to say on volleyball. Hopefully we have more to go on next week.
Next week on the show, but hopefully in a couple of days I'll actually be able to see them live.
Yeah. I feel like I could tell you that we beat them 3-0 the last time we played, but that was 2 years ago, and the team is
completely different.
It's Hatchet and Shadow, and that's it. So, and everyone else is different. So, I don't know. We were 10-4 at the time. That was a fun year. Oh well. Let me close out of all the volleyball tabs that I opened. Men's soccer, women's soccer, John?
Well, again, we'll do ladies first. Only one match this week, past week.
But what a match.
But what a match indeed. For as much as we talk about Russell Cicerone being, a dynamic offensive threat, his analog on the women's team is Carissima Catrona. She has 6 goals in the past 5 matches.
5 games. Yep.
And she's currently sitting tied for 6th in the nation with her 6 goals.
You would look that up. I did not think to look that up. That's good.
That's assuming the NCAA's website is correct.
Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it takes like 2 days to update. But there was a point this weekend where Cicerone had 7 goals in his last 5 games, and Catrona had 6 goals in her last 5 games. That's pretty swell. Against Canisius, though, which I really thought, John, was a UB beat Canisius 3-0. Canisius still hasn't scored on Buffalo since 2010. That's awesome. That said, I really thought that Canisius game was a who's who of women's soccer. Laura Dougal got the shutout. Julie Benatti, Andrea Kniper, and Carissima Catrona got the goals. It was really, if you wanted to break down the names that are important to this year's team, there's those 4, and that's what you're working with.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I thought it probably could have been a 4-0 or a 5-0 game. Mm-hmm. There were some chances that UB had where
they hit the half 0-0.
Yeah, I think in terms of possession, they completely dominated, and Coach Dirk has mentioned in the after match interview, whatever you want to call it. They got 21 shots, 8 shots on goal, and that was kind of a luxury they haven't really had in a few matches this season, where they have been getting a lot of shots but just haven't been putting a ton on goal. And of those 8, I think a couple, you probably take another 1 or 2 of those, and those could have been goals.
Yeah.
And one performance that I very much enjoyed was Nicole Garrett's
Yeah.
I think she played by far her best game to date.
Yeah, and she's had some good games. We've talked about how Garrett's. I'd love to see a little bit more polish if she's going to play a more offensive role, but she's had good games, deserves her starting role, played well last year as a freshman. I say all of that to say what she did on Friday night was exceptional. She was the best player on the field, without a doubt. Um, you know, she deserved to be in the offense. She deserved for people to finish her chances that she created on the wing. Um, she made smart plays. She really seems to have a lot of chemistry with AJ Van Kuyk. The way that they'll do overlapping runs with Van Kuyk coming off the fullback position and Garrett's up the wing, and I'm really glad to see that because Benatti has graduated to a level where you get Benatti the ball on the wing and she can pretty much do it herself a lot of the time. And so I'm glad to see some strong chemistry on the other side. But Garrett's was phenomenal. I'm pretty sure she earned. Actually, I'm 100% positive that she earned Player of the Game from the coaching staff. And Ben Sugimoto from the Buffalo News was there and said that she was his Player of the Game as well. And I think it's hard for anyone to disagree, even though she didn't score.
Yeah, I really don't think I could. I mean, I couldn't disagree either. She assisted on Catrona's goal, but she was all over the place in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if she continues this upswing and plays like the way she did against Canisius heading into MAC play, then Coach Burke may have the right wing situation hopefully figured out.
I
You know,
mean, how much of Cara Daly did we see on Friday? And I'm a big fan of Cara Daly, but I think it is figured out. You know, we haven't seen Carly Zakali much since the third game of the season. Um, Bramble's getting in, but not Bramble's getting in as a forward, which I still like. But it sure seems like it's Garrett. We'll see. We'll see what we do against Syracuse this coming. I guess is really the question. Um, Let me look at this
wh-
play by play, but I think Garrett's played more than an hour, which would be so Daly came in and played the last 13 minutes of the first half. And then Bramble came in. Okay, so Garrett's actually let's see. Well, it's going to be just about an hour. So Daly and Bramble came in, but Garrett's played just about an hour of that game, which I think is the largest time that we've had any one player on that right wing. And I mean, if there was ever a game for that to happen, it was Garrett's performance against Canisius because it was excellent. I don't know really what else we can say there. I was impressed with her last year. I love her drive and her pace, and it would just be wonderful to see her get a little more finesse. But the way that she played on Friday show is going to be a huge impact maker, just as she is right now, which is awesome. I would love to highlight that Laura Dougal only needed to make one save in this game, and I honestly can't remember where it was, but I think it came very late in the game. Whereas UB, got 21 shots and turned those into 8 shots on goal, which was just excellent. Especially in that first half. A big part of the reason that first half was surprisingly scoreless is UB didn't put anything on frame, and that's a frustration that we've had, even as they've gotten results these past 5 games. They haven't been putting a ton on frame, and they managed that in the second half, and that's what I wanted to see.
mm-hmm. And I guess looking ahead to this week, their final out-of-conference match before starting up MAC play is against Syracuse. And
Yep.
as we remember from last season, we were drinking orange juice on the show.
Yep.
after UB's match against Syracuse when Dana Lytle came in on the second overtime after Cassidy Kidd had a couple. That was one of the games where Cassidy Kidd was just snake bitten and just hit the crossbar.
It's Cassie Kidd's greatest assist, though.
Yes. And by all accounts, UB played Syracuse in the spring, and by all accounts, they completely ran them off the field. Right now, Syracuse is sitting at 6-1-1, but I'm taking that with a pinch of salt. Their out-of-conference strength of schedule, if you will, has not been overly difficult.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm glad to hear it. I have a bit of research that I think you don't have, which I'm excited about. But I'm glad.
Delaware, Army, Albany, Cornell, Rhode Island, Fairfield, Colgate, and Bucknell. Their lone loss coming to against Bucknell.
The best team on that run is Colgate.
And they tied.
They tied Colgate. I mean, that's not a particularly weak schedule. It's just not very strong. You know, like I don't know much about Bucknell, but I think Colgate's clearly the strongest team in that group. You know, if you'll remember, Rhode Island was the team that Navy beat 3-0 when we didn't know much about Navy, or Brown beat 3-0. One of them, you know, and then we had little trouble with Navy. Frustrating with Brown, but we were the better team in that game by far. And Syracuse only beat Rhode Island by 1. So whether it's a 3-goal aggregate or a 2-goal aggregate, you know, that's a direct, with one step in the middle comparison. I do think that Colgate's the toughest team on that schedule, and I think I'd be happy with a 1-1 draw against Colgate based on what they've been historically. We played Syracuse in spring last year, and spring's a time for, you know, take things with a pinch of salt for sure. But the last time I had a chance to talk to some folks who were around for the spring and familiar with it, said that we beat them up and down the field. That game was 2-0 with goals from Catrona and Marlowe. I don't rely on spring results all that much, but you know, the folks that I was talking to said that we looked much, much stronger than them there. We can come, you know, if we can get a result against Syracuse, I'll be happy. They're still an ACC program. That's still a conference that dominates women's soccer on a collegiate level, you know, on the NCAA level. I'm looking for, you know, I'm looking for a result. I'm looking for UB 4-2-2 headed into MAC play is pretty good, especially considering our 2 draws would have been very good. You know, in a game that we really dominated, and the other draw would be a game that we didn't really dominate, but that we should have won. And I believe, John, that 4-2-2, that's if we beat Syracuse, is what we had. Nope, it wasn't. We had 1 fewer tie going in. Never mind. Ignore me. I'd love a result against Syracuse. I think it's totally possible. You know, Syracuse is coming in on a 3-game winning streak. Whether their schedule's weak or difficult or anything, they still have that momentum of a 3-game winning streak.
Yeah.
I don't know if John has more to say or if I just stop talking and then John's just like, okay.
Okay, yeah. No, I have some orange juice in the fridge that I would really like to polish off next week.
I appreciate that I'll be able to know in advance if I need it, compared to last year when I oh, that's nice. That's nice. Sorry, we don't talk about football on the show, but John's a Cardinals fan, and the Bills are quickly losing my attention. And I like Larry Fitzgerald.
So do I.
Anyway,
so do I.
Last year it was a Sunday afternoon game, and all I had was walking out of church and John updating me quickly. This year, I'm going to have choir rehearsal on Thursday, but oh well.
Yeah, that game was... I was like baked into the seat that I was sitting in. It was so hot. It must have been well over 100 degrees on the field, and for those girls to go into double overtime and still pull out the win was
Yeah.
very very impressive.
I don't think we're going to have any video. It'll be on
Um,
ACC Network Extra, which I certainly cannot get access to.
yeah, I don't think I. Oh, I will have to check with my cable provider. Maybe I do get it. I don't know.
Well, that's the lone game of the weekend, and then they head in to MAC play after that, which we could talk about now, but we'll definitely talk about next week um, when the time comes, I think. But they've got 5 straight results. They haven't lost a game against a team that didn't make the NCAA tournament last year, and if they keep that up, as I said, there's only one other team on their schedule that made the NCAA tournament last year. So I'm feeling good about this team, better than I was preseason. I don't think they're a favorite like 2014, but I think, I think like we saw last year, once it kind of clicked, they were playing like a team that could win the championship. What I want to see, John, I want to see someone else be more of a presence in the offense. I think Benatti is not getting the ball as much as I'd like. When she is, she's certainly creating chances. Maybe it's Garrett's, as she was this past day against this past game against Canisius. Maybe it's Garrett's. Maybe it's Mo Petrie. It seems like her role is pretty solidified, and I'm happy with where she's at. Maybe it's Garrett's. Maybe it's Bramble as a super sub. Maybe it's Carrero who, is still around, still making plays, still active in things, but Catrona's kind of ended up the target, and that's okay. But I just love to see for there to be somebody else so that teams with a bunch of size can't envelop Catrona and really force us to just take long shots, or just to throw it in futilely into a box where we don't have the size advantage.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see what we can get out of Syracuse, and then we'll talk about MAC play next week, I think.
Yeah, hopefully enjoying a nice, cool, refreshing, orangey beverage.
A nice, cool, refreshing orangey beverage.
Yeah.
John, are you a with pulp or without pulp kind of guy?
I am indifferent.
Okay, I can live with that.
I don't really prefer one over the other. It doesn't really matter to me.
Okay. I cannot figure out why anyone would say that pulpy orange juice is bad. It's very odd to me. And so I'm glad to hear what you have to say. Hopefully we're drinking it next week, as you said.
Hopefully. I think we can...
Men's soccer.
Men's soccer. So
we're very excited about men's soccer, so we saved them for last.
Yes. So the shutout streak has ended. The nation's longest shutout streak, unfortunately, ended today in the 89th minute. But they are still undefeated, which is the more important.
And untied.
And untied, yes. Ricard Lindquist, I wasn't watching on video, and I actually had to look it up, what an Olympico is. And thankfully, the UB men's soccer team posted a video of it. And
I'm pulling up a screen here now if we like.
And he had a pretty goal on a free kick against Damon, and this one topped that.
Absolutely. Oh, that's fun.
Oh my, an infinite
I'm just
number.
I should really switch to the video, but I really enjoy watching that happen. When we port this over to our audio-only podcast, when I get my stuff together, that nobody's going to know what we're talking about. All right, here's his goal off a free kick. It's delightful. Whoop.
Whoop.
Whoop. Let's do it again.
Can you enlarge it?
Maybe, maybe not. Oh, there we go. Excellent. I mean, there's really no breakdown of this. He just kicks it, and it goes in the net. But it's really fun to watch and extremely rare. So it's just nice. Like, way to go, Ricard Lindquist. Um,
It's just like it's very satisfying to watch, just in the same way that watching a very nice curveball in baseball is.
mhm.
Just watching it bend like that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
that's actually the first one of those I have ever seen.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
certainly the first that UB scored since you've been around. Clint Dempsey had one in a Gold Cup game this past summer, or 2 summers ago. This past summer, but if you're not watching every men's national team game, you wouldn't have seen that. It's the first one that UB scored, that's for sure. Um,
yeah, and I replied to your tweet on the Bull Run account of saying Lindquist got the goal with a GIF of Homer Simpson saying "I am so smart."
yeah,
Um, just just
I'm not even
I
going to
think I'm
stop.
gonna
Week after
I'm
week.
it's I just feel like a genius, and Lindquist, he's already far exceeded, um,
Yeah,
my expectations. What I thought he was going. I thought he was just going to come in off the bench, um, this season, but he has
yeah.
far exceeded anything I ever expected him to do.
You compared him at times to a Marcus Hansen type role, and I think he can play that role, but I think he's much more versatile than Hansen was. Having him deliver some set pieces opens up. It just opens up other guys who are good in the box and who aren't. You know, he's already up to 3 goals and 5 assists on the year. Those are numbers that a couple years ago would have been. I mean, he
First
is
on the
among the top.
team.
He is among the top players on the team, and everyone benefits from Cicerone. But those are numbers that over the course of an entire season would be a very strong season. Um, and he's got his 3 goals on just 6 shots on goal, and so he's making it happen. Um, he's excellent. He's excellent in drawing attention away from Cicerone. He's excellent in his stamina. I thought that when he came out today in the second half, it helped turn the tide a bit when he needed a break. But he very nearly won the game for us after Liberty equalized. If he had been maybe 6 inches further upfield when he deflected the cross in from Cicerone, it might have gone in the net instead of beyond the far post. He's just tremendous. He deserves the starting role. I thought that both Donny and Steven Stryker were as dangerous today as they have been all year. Liberty's goalie had a great game. This was a game that UB could have won 3 or 4, scored 3 or 4 goals in. And their goalie had a great game. He stopped a Cicerone penalty kick, 4 different headers from Donny and Stryker, or Donny and Scales, and then Stryker had 2 more chances. There were times when Liberty really seemed to carve our defense up, and that's a little concerning to me. But I think part of it was they just were very good on their passes today. They were picking tight spots and they were hitting it, which is not something that we've really seen from other folks. But their goalie just played so well. I think if we get a second goal, then we maintain the shutout. I think we play a little differently and maintain the shutout. But I also don't mind that the shutout streak is over. It's nice, but I don't. If we win every game 2-1 from here on out, we win the national championship. That's a silly thing to say, but it's also true. I'll take 2-1 in every game if it's a win. So that's exciting. They do have 2 games this weekend. Also facing Niagara this week on Thursday. Now, John, you're gonna have some time up in Lewiston this week.
Yeah. Is the Niagara game Wednesday or Thursday?
Thursday.
Okay, yeah, actually that works.
All right.
I thought for some reason I thought that was Wednesday. Wednesday there's an alumni event that I'm going to. So yeah, I'll still be able to make it. It's spending a little bit more time in the falls than I would prefer, but
But you know,
I will go behind enemy lines.
yeah.
Uh,
I'm particularly interested in this Niagara game. They are 1-3-1. Their only win coming against Robert Morris in their first game, and then a pair of losses on a weekend down south a loss and a tie to Florida Atlantic and Florida International. They lost to NJIT 2-3, St. Francis 0-1. Um, they don't scare me, but they didn't scare me last year. And if I remember correctly, we started out with a 2-0 lead and frittered it away and ended up tying the game 2-2. Um, I think we had a 2-0 lead in like the first 15 minutes, if I remember correctly. Um, and so that was sucky. Um, yeah, we had Scales and Cicerone score in the first 14 minutes, and then they scored twice in the second half. Completely tail of two halves. Buffalo outshot them 8-1 in the first, and Niagara outshot us 8-1 in the second. So we'll see. They were a slightly better team last year than I think they are this year. And last year they were 1-16-3. So it's a should win. I think all of UB's games except for next Sunday are should wins before MAC play. I'm going to highlight for you, John, that before the season started, I don't know if we ever said this on the show, but I told you I really think they could hit MAC play with only one loss. And they've got Niagara should be a win. Bonaventure should be a win. Binghamton and Duquesne are teams that however good they are, I don't know, we should expect to beat. But next Sunday at South Florida is going to be a game. I'm really excited to see what we get out of that. South Florida was ranked at times last year. They are receiving votes in the poll, fewer votes than we are, but they're on the radar of the national pollsters. That's next Sunday. I think that's going to be the highlight of the week for our show, John. If no new teams will be starting, so maybe we need to lead off next week with men's soccer versus South Florida.
yeah, if I remember correctly, they were in the top 25 in the preseason poll.
Mm-hmm.
So they are a team, I think if we want a true measuring stick for how UB is progressing and where they are as a team, that'll be it. Before we play Akron in our first MAC game. But really, when I'm looking at the schedule and looking at what UB did last year, really South Florida and the Akron game, those could be their only two losses in the regular season.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to go that far, but I would love to believe it. I think Western Michigan and West Virginia are both good teams, as is Bowling Green. And if you'll remember last year, we escaped against Bowling Green.
And we escaped against Western Michigan too, but a win is a win.
I think it's possible. I think, if this team is good enough to sit on the edge of the rankings, and I think they certainly are, we might want to think about at-large spot. I don't want to talk too much about that yet because there's a long way to go. We might not need to beat Akron to make the NCAA tournament, which would be very, very cool. But I don't want to talk more about that because that's. I mean, say what you want to say, but let's not jinx it too much.
I'll just keep my trap shut.
Okay. South Florida's tough to get a beat on. They've tied. They entered the season at 19th ranked. Tied Michigan. Tied American, who's currently ranked 20th. I might see if I've got a day where there's no UB sports and I can get over to American to watch their team. I'd love to see that because they're ranked 20th. I didn't know that. They lost 4-1 to Virginia Tech, who was receiving votes at the time, and then they lost 4-1 to Maryland, who's a top 10 program. Then this past weekend they lost to Jacksonville and beat San Francisco, both at home in Tampa. So that loss to Jacksonville is probably their weakest showing on the schedule. So they're 1-3-2, but it's a little bit hard to get a beat on because can't blame them for that loss to Maryland. that loss to Virginia Tech 4-1 is probably worse than they should have been. They did tie American 1-1. That's not a bad, not a bad result considering. I think that it would be tough. I think I'd be happy if UB tied American 1-1. Let me see if Michigan has climbed into the rankings since that day. I hate this page sometimes. We'll see. I think there's certainly a tough assessment. Bonaventure is a team that UB can beat 4-5-6-0. Binghamton is an athletic department that we should just never lose to. I don't think Michigan is on the radar, so that's a result that's interesting. We'll see. We'll see what comes of it. I'm a little bit less scared of South Florida the more I look at it, John. But we'll see. First, we got to get through Niagara. But we are, I believe, the only team in the country that's 6-0-0 now.
You would be correct. And even though we gave up the shutout streak, so now stat time, UB has the best goals against average. Joe Kuda, I think it's like .16 or 15, some ridiculously
less than 0.16 because we went to over. Marginally less. But if we had given up one goal in 6 games of 90 minutes, it would be 0.16. But we had 8 more minutes. You keep talking.
It says 0.16 on the UB website.
Okay, well.
But who knows?
That's fine. It should be a little bit less than that because we played, a little bit more than 6 full games because of the overtime today. Anyway, keep going. Or don't, or watch football.
All right. That's okay. Distraction. Marcel Cicerone is still leading the nation in goals with total points with 21, and he is, in terms of total points, he's leading by a fairly large margin. The second, the person who is in second behind him only has 15 points, and Cicerone has 21.
That can be made up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
That's only 2 goals. So, hooray.
And Cicerone and Ricard Lindquist are tied for second in the nation in total assists.
Yeah, which is swell. I think, I'm really pleased. We kind of are, if we're not over an hour, we're very much on it right now. I was really pleased with this weekend. UB went in it was very hot in Virginia this weekend. I think Friday's game was 95 at kickoff at 1 p.m. Today's game was a little cooler, but it was still quite warm, and UB certainly had to deal with their dead legs from earlier. The Bulls go and do that in Texas, and they got a draw and a narrow loss, I think. And then they had another road trip the next weekend that did not go well up in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And so I'm really pleased to see them fight through it, regardless of the quality of the opponent. Better result than an analogous trip last year. They've got Binghamton, Duquesne, Bonaventure, Niagara, and South Florida left on the schedule. I think it's a really good chance for UB to show that they're up for the whole season, the run of the season. If they don't flag in the middle, we'll really be able to see what we're looking at from the men. They're an exciting team. They're the best team on campus right now, without a doubt. They're exciting. If you're somehow watching this and are able to go to games and haven't yet, UB's had 10 between the men and the women. 10 soccer games have been at home, and there's only 10 remaining. So we've already hit the halfway mark for home games. So really, go out and see this team when you get a chance. Go to Niagara on Thursday and go and watch them, because they're a very good team. There's a very good chance they'll be ranked this week. It might be 25th. They might be the first one receiving votes, but they were at 30th if we count out the receiving votes last week. And there's a good chance they jump in there because they did get 2 more wins. They're the only 6-0-0 team in the country. they're just very, very good. With that, we'll wrap it up, I think, John. Um, we've done a better job this year of talking about the upcoming matches in the context of each sports section. But this week in bowl, pair of road matches at Niagara. First volleyball on Tuesday. John, that game is at 6. Just so you know. Men's soccer on Thursday, and women's soccer is at Syracuse on Thursday as well. Friday, I think, is the beginning of another volleyball weekend. They'll play Oakland in Lewisburg, PA, where Bucknell is. Friday is also cross country's UB Stampede. Bit of a surprise to me it's not on a Saturday this year, but we'll live. Saturday has a pair of volleyball games in the remaining the Bucknell tournament. And then Sunday is that men's soccer game against South Florida that we're really hyping up. So not a terribly full schedule for UB, but we'll have more cross country to CSA. They'll probably run a deeper lineup than the freshman heavy stuff we saw last weekend, John. And we'll see what we get out of volleyball. Hopefully we've got a win to talk about. Hopefully we've got three more soccer wins to talk about, because that's really where the fun is this fall right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right. Well, we're definitely over an hour now. Thank you to our viewers. We are currently at 4, which I think is the most we've ever had in real time, which is great. We appreciate it. We know that some of you watch it after the fact. We really just love talking UB sports. We love all of UB's teams. I'll try not to be too corny, but it really is great, and we have just as much fun covering them as we do the more high-profile sports. I'm Matt Gritzmacher. I'm joined, as always, by John McWhinney. We are from UBBullRun.com. This is the Olympic Rundown on our YouTube channel, Blue Bowl TV. We'll see you next week. We're going to have a lot to talk about then as well. Have a good one.